When we get married, there is so much pressure on us to have what we call a perfect marriage or to be happily married. I remember after I got married, people would always ask me, "Are you so happy? Is everything going so great?" And the truth is sometimes, but sometimes not, which could make you feel when you're married like, is there something wrong? How wrong is it? Should I do something to fix it, or is it completely not fixable? Today, we're going to hear from a caller who's in a marriage with a person she loves, but she's not so sure she likes this person anymore. Welcome to Wedding Hunter Bridesmaid, a podcast where real-life drama meets unfiltered advice. I'm Jen Glantz, the founder of Bridesmaid for Hire and the author of Finally the Bride. Every episode, a new caller will share their honest and raw dilemma on friendship, love, weddings, and so much more. An expert and I will give advice, and you can chime in too with what you think they should do. Will they listen? Well, we'll soon find out. And P.S., Wedding Hunter Bridesmaid is a Love Stories by David's podcast. This episode is brought to you by Flightographer. Your honeymoon glow deserves more than just blurry iPhone pics. Head to flightographer.com/love to book a Flightographer photo shoot for your upcoming trip or as a thoughtful wedding gift for a special couple in your life. Flightographer is on a mission to help you remember your favorite stories forever. Visit flightographer.com/love to learn more. Joining me today is Kara Francis, a former New York divorce lawyer and coach. Welcome to the show, Kara.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to chat with you about this topic today because I know that you have been in the world of divorce and you might have seen people get divorced for so many reasons, but what are some of the common ones that you've seen over the years?
A lot of common ones I've seen, I've certainly seen my share of high conflict, narcissistic type of cases, but by and large, I would say it's more so a falling out of love. And as we get older and sort of that young love starts to go away, what's left? And for some couples, they haven't built that foundation from the beginning of something to fall back on, something to support them through that next chapter of their life. And so I very commonly see it's after people have a couple of kids and the craziness of those first few years of parenthood are over, and now things are kind of settling down a little bit. And then there's like this restlessness of, well, who am I? And there's no romantic connection with this person anymore. We're just like parents and teammates, and that can be very scary.
How do you know if you have fallen out of love? Because I don't know if it's maybe it is a feeling. So is it a feeling where you're like, my gut is saying I don't like this person anymore? Or is it I'm bored? Or is it I don't really know what I'm doing here? Is it a combination?
I would say it's a combination. So it can feel like a disconnection from the other person where you could be sitting in the same room together, but not even really feel them there or acknowledge them. You're just sort of existing together. It can be gut feelings where you'll just be doing something completely unrelated and it'll just hit you like, what am I doing in this relationship still? I don't want to be in here anymore. And one thing that took me a while to learn, even through my first marriage, was there's a difference between loving somebody and being in love.
What's the difference? Tell me. I'm so nervous. I'm like, tell me what's the difference?
From my experience, loving somebody means you care about them, you want the best for them, you want them to succeed and be happy, but you don't necessarily want to be in a relationship with them. So I view it as like you love your friends or you love your family. Being in love is more of a state of being where you're intimately connected, whether that's physically, emotionally, hopefully both, where they are an integral part of your life and you can't necessarily imagine life without them.
It's so interesting because sometimes when I'm fighting with my husband, I'm so mad at him. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so mad at you. Like, how could you do this? And it's over literally nothing. And then I usually give like a good silent treatment for a couple days. That's my little thing that I do. And during that silent treatment, I process. And 10 out of 10 times, day 2 of the silent treatment, where he's just like so miserable that I'm still not talking to him, I find myself looking at him and I'm like, I really do love you. I really, really do love you at my core. And what this is so stupid, and it's affected by my stubbornness and it's all these things, but that always hits me. That feeling always hits me. And that's how I know, okay, like this is just a fight. But how do you know if it's not just a fight and it's a serious, serious issue in a relationship? Like, how do you know that? Is it that you're fighting about the same things over and over again? Or is it the fights escalate? Like, how do you know that something is wrong? Is it so obvious?
I think it's different for everybody because some people are able to have a huge blowout fight and then just be fine.
Yeah, that's how I am.
I'm not one of those people. I tend to do what you do, which is shut down,
Yes.
silent treatment, the passive aggressiveness. I'm trying to work on that.
Me too.
But I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
But I think the defining factor is what you just said, which is after a certain period of time, after you've processed, you're able to view them, you're able to come back together.
Yeah.
You have a desire to come back together and to reconcile. And I would say, for example, in my first marriage, it was that way for a while, where it was this cycle of fighting and, like you said, usually recurring fights about similar or the same topics that don't ever really get resolved.
Yeah.
You have the fight, you have the silent treatment, and then eventually you come back to reconcile, you're good for a couple weeks, and then it starts again. So if you find yourself in that kind of cycle, that's a pretty good indicator that the relationship is not functioning in the way that it should. It doesn't have to be perfect, but if you're not making forward progress, even just a little bit on some of these issues, then that's a pretty good telltale sign. And one thing that I realized is I reached a certain point where after we did fight, I didn't have the desire to sort of come back together. And over time, that became more pronounced because I reached a point where I was like, it's easier to just disconnect and detach than fight all the time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a really good indication as well.
Like you find yourself kind of growing in a different direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say, though, every now and then I meet a couple and they're like, we don't fight. We never fight. And my first thought, because I'm a fighter, that's how I communicate. I'm very much like, this is who I am. I'm going to scream in your face. I'm very, like, that's how I am. My first thought is, well, they don't talk about serious things then, because how could they not fight? What do you think? Like, should couples fight? Do you think it's more of a red flag if they don't fight? I mean, how would you approach that?
I think, I'll never say it's not a black and white issue, but I will say that a degree of conflict in a relationship, healthy conflict, is a proponent of growth and development, both of the relationship and yourself. You're continuing to learn things about yourself and deciding to make changes in your life and show up differently. So for people who aren't fighting, it could be a case of maybe we're staying surface level, we're not really getting deep. But that might be okay for them, right? And so that's what I struggle with too sometimes, because I'm the type of person where I want a deep relationship where we talk about really important things, digging under all of those layers and like figuring out, what's important to each other and how we each operate. And not everybody wants that or is capable of that.
I envy those people.
I know. Sometimes I'm like, I wish I could just not care.
I wish my husband and I could just talk about the weather, but I'm like, tell me what you think is going to happen after we all die. Like, I am the same way. I have to go so deep. I have to have these like mind-blowing conversations about these deep, dense topics to feel alive. And it's good, but also it's not always the best. And it does sometimes lead to conflict and all of that, which is interesting. But what do you think is this is such a cliche question. I'm laughing asking you, what is the secret to a happy, healthy marriage? Is there a secret? I mean, you're someone who's getting married for the second time. You're approaching things different. What would you say is the secret?
My personal opinion on the secret is to never lose sight of yourself.
Oh, how?
Easier said than done, right? Not only when you become a wife, but also when you become a mother, right? That's another identity that you're navigating. Because at the end of the day, a relationship, a happy, healthy, fulfilling one, is two whole individuals coming together where they have a great life the way it is, and adding their partner into it is almost like the whipped cream and cherry on top of the sundae, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not indispensable, but it enhances your life and it makes it better and it makes it different. And that's why I cringe when people say things like "you complete me" or "you're my other half," right? Because that's what fuels a lot of this pressure is, well, who am I without you?
Yeah.
And well, we have to be functioning perfectly because we complete each other. And I think that that's faulty thinking. Sure, it's romantic and we like to see it on TV and movies. It's not the reality.
No, it's not. And I've been married for 4 years. I think my husband thinks it's 8 years, but we've been married 4 years. But sometimes I think to myself, if something were to happen to one of us, or if one of us passed away or something really dark, I don't know how I would function on my own anymore, because I'm never by myself. When am I ever by myself? I'm always with him. I'm always with the child. I'm never by myself. Do I know who I am? I don't really know. I know who I am as this person to them.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought of being alone again or being on my own again is terrifying, to the point where I'm like, I don't know how I would function with certain tasks that he now does exclusively that maybe I used to do. And I'm not talking about like gender role stuff. I'm talking about things like he takes care of literally like doing the laundry. I fold it, right? So like, will I know how to do the laundry kind of thing? Like things like that, where you're like, how would I become my own self again? So I think it's inevitable that a lot of people lose parts of themselves in marriage or in relationships. How do you find yourself again, whether you're newly divorced or you're just in a marriage and you're like, hey, I want to refigure out who I am?
A lot of it comes from that self-reflection of, what do I value? And what are my, like, if I could wave a magic wand, what would I do on a given day? Or what would I want my future to look like? And it's easier said than done, because like you said, the longer you're together, the more enmeshed you get and the more you sort of fall into your respective roles of like operating on a day-to-day basis. But what's important to remember is that you were able to live your life before this person came into your life. And it's just really about finding that person back. And they might look a little different now. And maybe their values have shifted, and maybe the way they see the world is different. But the core, the essence of your soul is still there. And sometimes it just takes a lot of intentional, focused work to find it.
Yeah, I notice that whenever I find myself becoming less independent and relying more on my partner, I'm like, we have to do something about this, especially with finances. That's a huge thing for me. I just always want to be financially savvy. But sometimes it's easier for him to do certain things. And I find myself saying, okay, whatever, I'm not going to look into this. No, you have to look into this. You have to keep an eye on everything. You have to know how to do things. So whenever I find myself being independently like lazy, that's when it's a huge wake-up call to just stay proactive in your own life, because it is also your life.
Yeah. It's like, it's one thing to be able to rely on somebody to do something for you.
Yeah.
It's another thing to be complacent.
Yeah.
And to sort of take it out of your brain and be like, I no longer need to know how to do this.
1000%.
Like when I got divorced and I was in my new apartment, my ex was always the one who handled the tech stuff, the internet, cable, router, all that whatnot, and the building of the furniture.
Yeah.
And I was sitting in the living room. I had a new entertainment stand and internet, and I was like, I guess I got to figure this out. And so I just put on reruns of a Bravo TV show, and it took me about 7 hours.
Oh, I was going to say 7 days. I'm like,
oh gosh,
it took me
no.
7 months. That's not bad. 7
but I did
hours.
it. Yeah. I mean, we can do so much more than we give ourselves credit for. Again, it's that fear that's really driving the bus in those moments. And even though fear is not guaranteed, it still has such a power on us. And so it's about taking that power back.
No, it's so true. I want to get into this week's caller, but before, I like to share a secret just so that we can be vulnerable before we listen to the stranger's most vulnerable secret to us. So my secret this week is very random. I have never shared this before. I know I'm going to get a lot of people questioning me after this, but I don't, and I refuse to wear moisturizer. I'm really embarrassed.
That is
I don't know why. I feel like people are going to really come at me
that
for
is
this.
unbelievable.
Yeah, I refuse. I like refuse. My skin is so oily that if I even put moisturizer or worse, sunscreen on my face, I feel it. I feel it and I can't not feel it.
Oh my
It's all I think about.
gosh. I give you a lot of credit though for sticking to that, because in today's world, skincare is like
I know.
all the rage and all of the YouTube videos, and oh my gosh, it's such a thing. I'm buying something new like every week.
I feel like I go to Sephora and I tell people that in Sephora and they look at me and they're like, this is what's wrong with everything that in your life is that you don't wear moisturizer. So now that I admitted it to the world, I'm willing to try. If you have recommendations, let me know for very thin moisturizers that I will not feel. Okay, that is my secret. I will let you share your secret.
So brave. Okay, so yeah, mine's kind of random and funny too. But what I like to do whenever I am commuting somewhere, so like on the subway and I'm walking to and from the subway, walking around the city, I have my headphones in, and I often like to pretend I'm like a model walking the runway. And I'll just put on this like badass song and I'll just be like strutting, but I'm like in a way that no one would notice, but like I know what I'm doing, and it just like amps me up. And then I'll be like, I can't believe I'm here.
Okay,
right
but you
now.
kind of do look like a model, though.
Well,
I mean,
I
it's
don't
not
know.
far off.
Everyone is entitled to their opinion on that.
What is-
I'm not one.
What is your go-to songs?
I mean, lately it's been Lady Gaga's new anthem. Obsessed with it.
Ooh.
It reminds me of when I was in college, Lady Gaga with like Poker Face
good.
and Paparazzi, like those good old.
Those were hits. I hope I run into you on a subway, which is in New York City. It could actually happen. I'm gonna just be sitting there hysterically laughing at you. That is such a good one, though. I feel like because subways are so stressful, to go into it and have that mindset of having fun it's the only way to approach the subway in New York City. So it's awesome. This episode is brought to you by Flightographer. Your honeymoon glow deserves more than just blurry iPhone pics. Head to flightographer.com/love to book a Flightographer photo shoot for your upcoming trip or as a thoughtful wedding gift for a special couple in your life. Flightographer is on a mission to help you remember your favorite stories forever. Visit flightographer.com/love to learn more. Let's get into this week's caller's question. Hi, Jen. This is Terry from Connecticut. I'm reaching out because I'm at a crossroads in my marriage and don't know if it's fixable or if we're heading towards divorce. Lately, it feels like we're just constantly fighting. The arguments have become more frequent, and no matter how much we try to talk things out, we always end up back in the same place. For example, last week we fought for hours over something small. He forgot to pick up groceries I asked for, and instead of discussing it calmly, we both ended up yelling at each other about things that had nothing to do with groceries. I'm feeling so unhappy most of the time. We used to enjoy spending time together, but now I find myself avoiding him or just feeling drained after even a short conversation. I love him, but I'm not sure I like him anymore. I can't remember the last time we laughed together or had fun. The emotional connection feels like it's gone. I keep thinking maybe it's a tough patch or that at some point we'll know what to do. But how do you tell if things can be worked through or if it's time to face the fact that this marriage isn't worth saving? I don't want to give up if there's hope, but also don't want to keep struggling if it's not going to improve. I just need guidance on what to do or if I should explore the possibility of moving on. This is tough. This is tough. Because again, I feel like it's so hard to like understand feelings of what is love, what is like, are we happy, are we not? Like these are just so complex words. What do you like? What is step one for a person who's feeling like this?
I think step one is releasing the pressure on the decision itself. And like from the get-go, just reminding yourself, and it might take a few times for you to actually believe it, but like looking at it through the lens of no matter what I decide to do, I'm going to decide what's best for me and I'm going to be okay. It doesn't matter what it looks like. I'm going to make the best decision that I can for myself. And if I need to make another decision down the road, I will, right? So it's not like this, you're staring down the road of one decision that's, going to define the rest of your life.
Yeah.
It'll define what comes next, but life will continue forward and you can reevaluate and make new decisions along the way. What she said sort of reminded me of what we were talking about, of the difference between loving somebody and being in love, right? So you love this person because you've been together for a long time, you care about them, you don't wish them harm, you want the best for them, but you don't really like to be around them. You feel detached. I'm hearing fighting over similar things. And that's not to say that, random, stupid, silly fights, like those happen.
Yeah.
Those happen all the time. It's more so about, okay, how do we come back together? How do we come back together afterwards?
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily sound like that's happening. And so everybody has sort of their line in the sand. And a lot of my clients struggle with this. They'll be like, just tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because I can't. It's a personal decision. And everyone has a different sort of runway for this decision. Some people know right away. Some people need more time to process. But one good sign is, and this is something that I experience as well, which is when you sit down and think about it, the thought of, the fear and the challenge of going through the divorce process seems more palatable to you than staying in this relationship. And over time, it's almost like it's on a scale. And over time, as that side of the scale gets higher and higher, you do reach a point where you're like, I don't care anymore that this is going to be hard. I can't be here anymore. And that's different for everybody.
Yeah, I'm sure that desperation starts to really creep up and you're like, this is it. What is a good first step conversation-wise with your partner? I'm so blunt. I would just walk up to my partner and be like, I'm not happy. But I know that that's like not the way to approach it. So this person's not sure if she wants to get divorced. She just knows she's not happy. She knows they haven't laughed in a while. They fight about little things. So what does that first conversation look like? Like, how do you even say that to a person? Because their partner might be delusional and think everything's great.
Yeah. I honestly like what you just said. I think it's just about how you deliver it.
That's my problem in life. That's my biggest problem. And it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Put it on your tombstone.
Yes.
But it's true, right? Clear is kind. Don't beat around the bush. There's too much of that happening in today's day and age. Just say what you mean and mean what you say. It's going to save both of you a lot of time and confusion. And what I like to tell clients to do in this situation is only speak for yourself. Speak for your own feelings. Don't assume you know how they feel. Don't rope them into a we, right? Like we're not happy or we never have fun, right? Because you don't know. Like to your point, they may think everything's fine.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to just focus on I statements. I feel this, I feel that. As well as try your best to avoid blaming, right? Both of you played a role in where you are today. Maybe it's not equal roles, but that doesn't really matter. It's the fact that nobody is to blame 100% for this, and that's not going to help you move forward.
Yeah.
So those are just some initial tips that I would say.
Are you allowed to say you statements or no? Like you make me feel this way.
So there's a way you can say that doesn't make it as blamey. So you can reframe it as when you say or do this, I feel this, right? Instead of you make me feel this.
Yeah.
There's a difference there.
My other biggest thing that I do, I know this is not about me, but I am like a 100% person. So I'm like, you always do this. You never do this. My partner's like, it's not true. So is that important to not make these like gigantic statements too?
Yeah. And I think that's why when she mentioned in her submission of then we'll just start fighting about random things that don't even matter, right? Because when you use terms like always or never, it does immediately cause the other person to feel defensive. And they're like, well, I can think of 5 examples of where that's not true, right? And then you're just down this other path. We're like, how did we even get here?
That's how I am when I fight. I'm like, always, never. And it's just too complicated. I've started writing down before I enter a fight, or before I enter a conversation. I write down like, okay, here's my main points, my agenda. And it helps a person like me who's very hot-headed deliver these messages. So I think that could be helpful. I think, okay, again, this person has a couple of options, right? They can have this intro conversation. If this person, I know that a lot of people also, and I'm guilty of this, they compare their relationships to other people. So they're like, well, John and Susie seem so much happier than us. I mean, what do you say to people who their relationship might not be going very well and they're just doing the compare contrast game?
Yeah, that is not going to be helpful. I experienced something similar where I would approach my ex with a concern and I would receive a response along the lines of, this is what every married couple does. This is normal. This is what happens. And at the end of the day, it didn't feel normal to me. It didn't feel right to me. And that's what matters. And that's why, I hate the idea of like a perfect marriage. There's no single right way to do marriage. It is so dependent on each couple and each individual within the couple. And so if something's not working for you, it's not working. And it doesn't matter if John and Susie do it that way. Again, that's sort of like a path to nowhere, because then you're going to feel like you're not being heard and that you're just kind of being not validated of like, you're wrong. You don't know what you're thinking. Like, this is what these people do, right? That's what it conveys, even though you're not saying that.
No, and then you feel like you have to be somebody you're not because that's what everyone else is doing. And I know Terry mentioned that she might want to fix this. What are the steps you can take? Like, is it meeting with a professional? Is it getting on the same page with your partner? And also, what if your partner doesn't feel the same? What if they don't want to fix it? Or what if they don't think anything is wrong?
I would definitely recommend involving a professional, because it's helpful to have someone neutral sort of moderate these discussions. Yes, have conversations just with your spouse too, but if you really want to make a concerted effort to reconcile and make this work, I do think the best resource is to bring in someone to help, because they will make sure that each of you feels heard and seen. They will pick up on things that you two won't be able to because your emotions are so heightened, and will help you think of things differently. So I would normally recommend both individual therapy and couples therapy or coaching. If your spouse doesn't want to play ball, then you have a decision to make, right? It's, can I accept this relationship and this person for what it is and still find a way to be happy? Or am I sacrificing my authenticity? Am I sacrificing something that's really important to me? Because I did that for a while and it catches up to you, right? It might temporarily solve the problem by just sort of stifling it and just saying, well, I'm just going to be fine. It might work for a while. It doesn't last, right? Because our bodies won't let it. It'll keep coming.
Oh my God. Your body is constantly screaming the truth at you and you're constantly ignoring it. Does it take two to change? Does it take two to change and improve a marriage? Or can one person be the hero and say, I am going to single-handedly do everything I can to try to fix this? Can you drag your partner along, or does the partner need to buy in?
I think if you want a marriage where you're both connected and fulfilled, it has to make sense to you. What makes sense to me might not, like my partner might not view it the same way. So if we create a dynamic or an environment where we're both okay with it, then that's okay. Really, when a relationship isn't functioning in a healthy way, there's a few like very high level ways to approach it. You can accept it as is. You can change how you are showing up in the relationship. You can leave the relationship. And really, that's just such a personal decision, and it really depends on what's important to you and how you want to live your life.
And you can't force people to change if they don't want to.
Nope.
That's like the golden rule that is so hard to accept, because if you are somebody who has good intentions and you want something to work so bad, you can't force the other person, right?
I have a really good example of this. So, my fiance and I have been doing some couples therapy leading up to our marriage, just to have some of these important conversations. And there were certain growth areas that I, asked him to work on. And he very excitedly and exuberantly went for it. And then I found myself in a place where I'm like, but not that way.
Oh, I would do that
internally, right? And then that's a situation where you have to check yourself. Because you're like, you know what, Kara? You asked for some changes here. how you receive it, that's on you, right? No one's going to do things exactly the same way you would do it. And so that is where it's more of an individual reflection and work. So it's important to distinguish between what's happening as a couple versus what's happening with me.
Yeah, that's so hard though, especially because you're not talking about a friend you just met. You're talking about a person who you know very well. So you want to intervene a certain way. You almost want to be a little drastic and you want to be overbearing, but sometimes you do have to pull it back a little bit because, again, you can't force people to change. You could ask, but you have to let them do it their way. I want to ask you before we go, people always think, okay, what is my idea of a happy, perfect relationship? I don't like the word perfect, so I'm going to throw that out. But happy, I mean, how can you do inner work or just an exercise to figure out what a happy marriage would be for you, whether you are thinking of getting married, you're single, or you are married?
So I think it comes down to balancing individuality and the relationship. Because you can have both, and they may not always be 50-50. In fact, I think that's not realistic. But a happy relationship is one that allows you to be your true, authentic self. You are not putting on a mask. You're not sacrificing things that are very important to you. You're not doing what you think you should be doing. You are just being. And you're able to be content in just being with your partner, and your partner is feeling the same way. So I think that's one of the big things, as well as just communication, because whether it is something to do with kids or finances or fidelity, it all comes back to how you talk about it.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel like I never learned my communication style until I was in a marriage, and I'm sort of looking at myself in the mirror like, Jen, you are a huge part of the problem. You've just gotten away with it your whole life because your friends don't call you out on it and your parents accept it. And now you're dealing with a human being who's the brunt of all of it, and it's not right. So I do think a huge part of understanding a happy marriage is looking at yourself and knowing how you are, and communication is everything. Where can people find out more about you?
Yes, so you can check out my website, karafranciscoaching.com, and my Instagram is karafranciscoach.
Yay, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Of course.
Yay. Woo. This episode is brought to you by Flightographer. Your honeymoon glow deserves more than just blurry iPhone pics. Head to flightographer.com/love to book a Flightographer photo shoot for your upcoming trip or as a thoughtful wedding gift for a special couple in your life. Flightographer is on a mission to help you remember your favorite stories forever. Visit flightographer.com/love to learn more. Thank you for listening to 1-800-Bridesmaid, and I hope this caller's story gave you something to think about. Have a wedding dilemma or relationship question? Submit your story on 1-800-Bridesmaid.com. Find more 1-800-Bridesmaid episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and watch the full episodes on YouTube. For behind-the-scenes content and daily advice, follow Bridesmaid for Hire and Love Stories by Davids on Instagram and TikTok. If you enjoyed these stories, check out my book, Finally the Bride by Jen Glantz on Amazon. And remember, sometimes the best advice comes from strangers we meet along the way. Until next time, this is your professional bridesmaid signing off.